Well, good evening, and thanks for joining us here on News 20 on GTN. I'm Randy Gardner alongside the one and only Coach Hammer from Hammer Bodies Custom Fitness. And you know what time of the year it is when this man's at the news desk.
Yeah, you always seem to get me in like January, February, the beginning of the year. I wonder why.
Last year you weren't here, though.
I think you're right. Did we miss last year?
We did 2 years ago. Can't you tell by the body size?
Actually, the last time I was here, and it's been so long, it was 1934.
Nice. It feels like that. Look, what I do as far as a diet is I just take and exercise, buy a bigger coat, bigger shirt.
You know, you do, don't you? You've got those little things. He always looks good, you know? You always look good.
Well, thanks. I appreciate that. I don't feel good. And I'll tell you what, while we have it on my close-up here, let's go ahead and show you what I grabbed for the show.
God.
Now let's get Coach's reaction.
Oh, my God. I cannot believe you're not eating that.
I am going to eat this because let's go ahead into the long shot real quick here. Coach, this is what most people, when they come into work, whether it's Monday through Friday, somebody has brought something like this in to share with everybody, like our city clerk brought in today for us to share.
Really?
Said it's low fat, so that's the first thing I do is I take it and grab it. It doesn't matter what you do. This thing's 2 inches by 3 inches. I figure, how much can this hurt me? Look at it. Here, I'm gonna try it.
Oh, you're hurting me.
It was actually really good.
Well, sure, it's good. It's loaded with sugar. It's loaded with oils. It's very highly processed.
You want to bite?
No, thank you. No, thank you.
Would you ever eat something
That's like Krypton. It's the closer it gets, the more.
No, seriously. Would you eat something like that?
No, I would not.
Never?
And, the last time I actually ate anything like that, and I know you think I'm putting you on or I'm doing this because I'm on cameras and the folks out there are listening to me, but this is square business. It's the honest to goodness truth. The last time I ate anything like that was when I was 13 years old. I had, for a lot of reasons in my life, I started studying nutrition at a young age because I needed to get bigger and more muscular. I wanted to be a football player, and as anybody has seen me in real life, I'm not a big guy, and I played football at 5'4", about 170 pounds. And I was really small. I was tiny at the time when I was 13, and I needed to be a big guy. And so I started studying nutrition and training and bodybuilding and working out, and food became, I understood, the most important factor in my life if I was going to work out because I needed to rebuild muscle. And I couldn't put sugar in my body because it destroys the B and the C vitamin in the blood, and that interferes with protein synthesis. So I gave that stuff up. I literally walked away from it. And I was a huge junk food guy.
So will you think less of me if I eat that during the show?
I most certainly will. Absolutely. I'm going to think you're crazy. Why would you put that in your bloodstream and raise your blood sugar level? Then you're going to be wired for a little while.
It was so good, though.
Oh, I know it. Yeah.
So good.
And that's what people don't understand. The stuff that tastes so good, for the most part, is loaded with a lot of the sugars. It breaks down in the body very quickly, like that's just white flour that's been highly refined. So it's going to break down very quickly. It doesn't have much fiber in it at all. So there's nothing to keep the breakdown from occurring very quickly, slowly. And then it's going to raise the blood sugar level, and you're going to have all kinds of problems.
And that's what I like about you, is that you're brutally honest with not only myself, but with everybody else. And that's one of the biggest forms of feedback that I hear when you're on the show, is that, hey, Coach will tell you the way it is. And I know if he's telling you, that's the way it should be.
Well, I have to be brutally honest with you just to keep you alive.
Well, that's true. And that's why I feel that I am like the average individual out there. 3 kids, working, you got kids going to practice, you've got a life, you've just got so much going on. And it is tough to eat nutritionally, even though you know it's the right thing to do and you know you should work out. There's no time.
It is difficult. I hear that constantly. We hear it in our practice when we work with people, when we design nutrition plans. The very first thing we do is not design the actual meal plan. The first thing we do in our consultations is get an idea of what their schedule in life is. How much stress are they under? What does their day look like? Because I look for times when they can eat. I look for what they can put in their body, when they can put it in their body. We have to develop a meal schedule. That's number one. Once we get a meal schedule going, once the individual knows when they're going to eat, then you you plug in the appropriate foods for the times and for what they're doing and what their needs are. And I'll tell you what you just said about the convenience versus inconvenience and running out the door. You have three children, and you're a soccer coach, and you coach all of their teams, as do a lot of folks. You're representative of most of America out there. It is really difficult to sit down and say, okay, I'm going shopping. I'm going to make my meals, each of my meals. I'm going to have them prepared. That's a tough thing to do. You're a busy guy on the set. You're a busy guy off the set. There's a lot going on, and the same thing for everybody. What I try to get folks to do is understand, have some knowledge of what foods are convenient, what foods are fast, and they still are nutritious and healthy, and put those together.
All right, question for you. How do you incorporate maybe a diet that will, or say diet is a bad word in terms of, you've told me that before.
Sure.
But healthy eating.
Lifestyle eating.
Right.
Plan.
How do I lifestyle healthy eat for myself and still have 3 kids to cook for and a wife that might not eat what I'm going to eat, and definitely the kids aren't going to eat what I eat?
Well, number one, let's not think about you or your wife right now. Let's think about the 3 most important folks in the family. Even though you and your wife are very important, you can't go get thrown off the ship. If you get thrown off the ship, you got 3 kids on the ship that can't navigate the ship in life. So you still have to be there, so you have to maintain your health. But let's take a look at these 3 young, growing, rapidly developing bodies that you have. And let's understand that they have needs that are different than yours. Their metabolism is so much quicker. They are in a growth, state right now. They are developing very quickly. So they tear through food with high metabolisms, much, much greater than you or your wife. So how do you feed those machines? What kind of food do they need? You have to be able to put together some whole food meals, which incorporate complex carbohydrates, a good protein source. They're going to need some fruits and vegetables so that they can be healthy and disease-free. You need to get some other phytonutrients in from other types of foods. And when you put those together, fruits, vegetables, proteins, carbohydrates, and good fats, and you put those together in a meal, then you're really feeding those kids. And so understanding what that looks like, is it a piece of grilled chicken with maybe a little brown rice and some steamed broccoli, and then they're getting maybe something for dessert like a ice cold fruit plate, something like that. If you can start putting together 3, 4, or 5 meals that can be alternated throughout the week, now you've solved the issue of taking care of the kids' meals. You've got them down. You understand where to go at the grocery store very quickly. Aisle 2, aisle 8, the produce section, the fresh section that's refrigerated for the dairy or whatever you're getting. And then you get it home, and you understand how quickly it's going to take to make that meal for them. Get that down first. Then turn to you and your wife. And if you and your wife aren't going to eat like that, and you have to run out the door at 6 o'clock on a Tuesday morning, then there are some foods that you're going to have in that refrigerator that are fresh, that have enzymes in them, that will help you, that you can grab with your hand, put it together with something else, and eat it down the way. So instead of something like that from the city clerk, what I would suggest would be a 5-minute smoothie. And we've talked about smoothies before. And what does that look like for you? What it looks like for you, because my understanding is you need energy. You're a high energy guy. You're on the phone. You're talking to the next guest that's going to be coming in.
Let me tell you what I put in my smoothie
Tell me what's in your smoothie.
And this is maybe once every 2 days. I'll take the time to make something like this. All right. Ice, almond milk, banana, strawberries, blueberries, and maybe some blackberries or something. And a cup of whey protein in there to give it a chocolatey taste.
I like it. Overall, I think what you've got, not bad.
Okay, now I make enough that it fills the entire blender. So when I pour it in a cup, a pretty good sized cup, it fills that cup, and I drink that, and then I fill it up again to the top and drink a second one. Is that too much?
Yes. Now we're getting into portion control. So, and I've been on the show before, and I've made this statement before, and I make to the folks that we counsel. The body can only use what it needs. And if it doesn't need it, it can't use it. What happens to the excess food that you put in your body, whether it be a double smoothie or a 16-ounce steak or buttered green beans that fill the plate? When you eat too much food and your body can no longer use that food at that meal setting, the additional food that is not used by the body eventually gets stored as fat. Now, you're going to have a lot of waste there that's going to have to be voided from the body at some point, but the remainder of that food will be converted to fat. So we tend to eat too much. We overeat in America. That's no great shocking news. We all know that. But the biggest problem is we don't use half of what we put in our body because we overeat. We're used to eating large meals to the point where we say to ourselves, wow, I'm hungry. I need to eat more. I don't feel filled up. We're used to that. Our clothes are oversized. Everything is bigger and larger. The portions that we buy at the restaurant that they serve us are much larger than they were in 1955 and even 1970. Our portions are huge. So understand that double smoothie that you're drinking in the morning, you only need the one. You don't need the two. I would much prefer if you're going to make the double, go ahead and make it. Drink one before you leave the house. That's your morning meal. That second one goes in a thermos, it goes in the car, and that's a second meal, maybe a power snack between breakfast and lunch or lunch and dinner, and that's a second meal in and of itself.
So we break down the food aspect of stuff, and then you break down the exercise aspect. Is it 50-50 to maintain a healthy balance to even start being on the healthy road per se? Or is it swayed 70 exercise, 30 what you're putting in your body?
The latter. Food, in my mind, and I love exercise, I'm known as the exercise guy. Food, in my mind, is the key ingredient to healthy living. And without powering the machine, without replenishing all of those trillions of cells that we have, then we're going to prematurely age and we're going to have issues. We're not going to work optimally and we're going to have problems. So I think food is number one, and I think it's 65, 70% food. I've gone sometimes and thought it was 80%. But let's just, for the sake of being pretty normal, let's say 70% food, 30% movement, exercise. The one thing I want to say about exercise is I don't think we need a ton of it. I don't think we need as much as is portrayed out there. I do think that the number one ingredient for the right type of training or for training to be the right thing for you and to have its positive effect on you, is consistency. And without consistency, we're all going to just sometimes do well and sometimes not do well with exercise. But if you can take a little exercise throughout the day and be consistent with it, you're going to do great. So I'd rather see somebody do 30 minutes or 15 minutes and do it every day at the same time, or just get it in every day, than to do 2.5 hours on Monday, don't do anything till Thursday, then come back and go 30 minutes on Friday, and then you're off from exercise for a week. That's not going to help the body. It's the consistency.
What would you say to employers and corporations and business out there about the correlation of the employee to the productivity within the workplace?
Wow, you're hitting on the future of fitness in America. The future of wellness. You just opened up the big wellness door. And I will tell you this, there is a direct correlation between the employee, the individual working at any level, whether it's at the C level, the CEO, the COO, the CFO, the folks that kind of run the show and administrate, or the individual who's working in the mailroom. It's the same thing. We all have the same human body. If we're not feeding the body and keeping the blood sugars even, so we have blood sugar sustainability, we have nice, long, lengthy blood flow with blood sugar coming into the blood, giving us energy throughout the day, if we don't maintain healthfulness of the body, if we don't make sure that we have a nice high immune system and we don't get sick and we're free of disease, then we're going to have very poor productivity. We're going to have inconsistency in the way we work. And just because a person comes to work every day and has perfect attendance doesn't mean that their mind is into what they're doing. It doesn't mean that they're able to contribute 100% and do the job they're supposed to do. They may be asleep at the wheel, but they can get there.
Now, I've heard some businesses nationally and locally, they take and have a period of time during the day where you can go to the gym or they have a workout area for like 30 minutes or whatever. How important is that, would you say, in terms of the productivity? Somebody, a corporation or a business will say, well, we're paying you to be here and work for 9 hours or 8 hours a day. We're not going to give you a half-hour lunch and then a half hour to go work out. But through your professional, experience, that half hour that you give that employee, how much more does it pay off throughout the day in terms of them being aware and just being more positively focused on what they do?
If they will do it, if the employee will take that half hour and be consistent and they're allowed to get that in each day, wow, what a difference it makes in how you're refreshed, what happens to your body in getting blood flow, fresh oxygenated and nutrienated blood disseminated throughout every fiber, every pore, every cell in your body. Remember, the cell is the key ingredient for the body. So cells make tissue, tissue makes fiber, fiber makes nerve, bone, muscle, you name it, teeth, hair, scalp. And so when you're refocusing all of that energy into all parts of your body, including your brain, and you get to do that during the day while you're at work, what a huge difference that makes in how you feel and how you're able to come back to work and get back to your computer and do some really neat things at a very high level.
I saw on the internet the other day, I know you love when people start that question off or that sentence off, but they were talking about the detriment of how long that Americans sit now, whether it's in the car for the commute and then you walk into work and then you sit for 4 hours and then you go to lunch and then you sit for another 4 hours and then you go home and you sit on the couch. How bad that just sitting is for you.
It's very true. It's horrible. It's horrific. Sitting and watching a 4-hour football game and not even getting up to go to the bathroom, and some people don't. They just sit. They sit right through the halftime. They've got their bowl of chips. They've got their ice cream. They've got their cold beer. Not that those all go together, but it's all there. And the remote, and they never get up. But sitting, in general, sitting is not good for the human body. The human body wasn't designed to just sit and be sedentary. And when you force it to be that way, or when it is that way, you get very little blood flow. It is not healthy for the body. It can really injure us down the road, and we need to get up and move around.
Can you revert some of the damage that you do, no matter whether you're 5 pounds overweight or you're 200 pounds overweight? Can you revert back to being a healthy individual by exercising and dieting and maybe 6 months, a year, 2 years worth of work? You go back to, I don't want to say not being normal, but becoming it's almost like a smoker. If you stop smoking after 10 years, do you go back to like you never smoked before?
Yes, you can. You can. I don't know that you're ever going to undo all the damage that you've done if you did a lot of damage to yourself, especially during the youthful years, like the years that your children are, the age they are. Because again, remember I said those are the developmental years. But because they're young, they have a tremendous ability to come back very quickly. But most human beings can undo some of the damage they've done. It's important, again, to understand just because you decide, well, I'm going to undo that damage, and so I'm going to start eating healthier, and I'm going to start working out, and they do that for a couple of times, and they think, okay, I did it in January, I'm good. That's not it. That consistency is going to be the thing that's going to carry them. Once you stop, once you go back, you stop that thread of all of those good things that you're doing to yourself, getting oxygen in your blood, making sure that your joints move freely, getting the right nutrients in your body so that your cells are refurbished and replenished. When you stop doing that, then you discontinue all the good things that you're doing to help go back to where you were. It's difficult, but you can do that.
I had somebody the other day tell me, well, I don't work out as much as probably I should because, look, there's athletes that work out all the time. That's their job, and they drop dead of a heart attack or whatever. So what's the difference?
And do we have an idea of why some of them just drop dead for no apparent reason? Many of the athletes who were consistent in training from the time they were 3 years old, like your kids. You started them in soccer at a very young age, whether it's just kicking the ball in the backyard, then they went to a little teamwork, and then they joined teams, and now they're playing select. Athletes have been training consistently. We retire at some point. At some point, we age to the point where we can't play any longer. We stop. Athletes who have played and played and played the game and not done much of the other, which is eating healthfully, because they've let their exercise, their extreme exercise, burn calories off of them, keep their weight relatively low. Athletes who have played the sport and their joints have remained mobile and their heart has continued to be exercised through the practices and games, and now they've stopped. When you stop like that and that body comes to a complete halt, you absolutely open yourself up to a myocardial infarction, a heart attack. You open yourself up to circulatory damage. You open yourself up to a complete shock of the system.
Can you exercise too much? Can you go out there and run too much, do too many,
yes, you
sit-ups
can.
and all that kind of good stuff? Can you?
Yes, you can. And typically what happens is you hurt yourself. You damage parts of your body. You can lift weights. You can do strength training, resistance training, and you can do too much for what your body can handle. First things first, the body overtrains. And when it overtrains, it actually reverts. It stops building. You begin to get joint effects. The joints start to swell, so inflammation occurs. The body just gets a general malaise and you get tired. You don't sleep well. You almost feel exhausted if you're training too much. Distance runners, long-term aerobic distance runners, and people who run long, for marathons and ultra marathons, and that's all they do because they're almost addicted to the high of running, and they can't live, so to speak, without getting out and running that day. You'll see them out there in 6 degrees outside. They'll figure out a way to run in the ice, right? Those kinds of folks, they put in so much training that it actually is not that healthy and literally can wear them down. So they're not doing good things for themselves, they're actually doing damage to themselves. Moderation is extremely important when it comes to exercise.
This is going to be a 2-part show tonight, so you'll see the second part in a few days here on the channel because we've got way too much to talk about. The next show, we're going to talk a little bit more about the athletes out there. This is more geared towards the average individual like myself. But as we start to wrap this up, so what do you say to everybody? We're at the end of January, we're heading into February, we're starting to get into that season where we're going to be outdoor. We've been cooped up. What do you do now? Do you get the bike out? Do you start doing a little more walking? How do you even start this program?
Okay. Well, the first thing I would tell folks who haven't started their exercise program, the typical thing at the beginning, right after January 2nd, and they want to get back into it, they've made their resolutions and they know they want to get going. I always say this. If you have not been training on a regular basis, if you have been eating and eating and eating and you've gained excess pounds, go slowly, proceed slowly. Do not try to rush into something because you've gotten this big excitement. You have a tendency to do that yourself and jump into it whole hog. If you are a little older, if you are not in your teens, your 20s, then you need to go and proceed slowly because you can shock the system. haven't been used to moving. You've been sedentary. Your body has not been eating healthy. It's been eating unhealthy. You've gained excess pounds of body fat, which puts stress on the heart. It puts stress on the circulatory system and the nervous system and the endocrinological system. Say that 5 times. And so what happens is the body is shocked. And when you shock the body like that, when you get out there and you go full force the first week, you're going to injure yourself. And when you injure yourself, the tendency is to not come back and do it, and then you fall right off the wagon again.
My biggest problem, and I'm sure everybody else out there can account to this, is the accountability issue. That nobody's there pushing me. Get up out of bed, go do this. You know, it's like with this great thing that I'm going to eat during the commercial break.
It really is. That is just classically horrible.
Would it be more beneficial to eat the styrofoam paper than the actual meal?
That would sound neat on the air to folks, but the styrofoam and the paper probably isn't going to be more beneficial. Neither one is really healthy for you.
All
honestly.
right. So without naming any brands or anything, a lot of fitness trackers that people wear around their arms, relate to their phones and tell how many steps and all that kind of stuff. Is that something that is beneficial and keep you accountable for what you're doing? Shows you the steps.
They're new, they're hot, it's another electric bubble, it's great, it's fun. But if it works for you, I say do it. If you want to spend the $125 or the $275, depending on what you want, the bells and whistles, if it's going to give you the feedback, and more importantly, if it's going to get you to get out there and do your work and keep it at the right pace and keep you doing it consistently, I say spend the money and use it. Use whatever you need to use to keep you consistent, to do it correctly, and to keep you going, because you need consistent exercise along with consistency of eating healthy foods and feeding the machine.
1 minute left. I know when you come on the show, I get all gung-ho. I listen to what you say, and I'm sure everybody else out there does too, in terms of, all right, now I've heard what Coach had to say. I'm going to get this kick started. If you had a ballpark, how many people in this country on a percentage basis do exactly what we talked about, eat right, exercise right, and do it on a consistent basis? Is it less than 5%?
I think you're probably, it used to be 3.5% 10 years ago. I think we're probably at this point, and I haven't seen anything latest. The last I saw it was a little over 5% of the total population of men, women, and children in the United States of America worked out regularly over the course of a year. It's shocking, but you know, and this was like 3 years ago is when I read that statistic. So that statistic is not accurate for 2015. That's shocking, but you know what? Even if it's 8% or 10%, that means 90% of the population is not very regular in exercise. And we just said consistency and regularity is the key to keeping you healthy.
Coach, well, at least I know now that I'm part of that 95%, and I feel really good about it. Part 1 of part 2, Coach is going to be with us again for another half hour here on the show. Thanks. I appreciate your time as always. You make me feel a little better about myself, and I am going to eat this during the break.
Oh, no.
So,
no.
We'll take a quick break here, and thanks for joining us, and we'll see you tomorrow night right here on News 20 on GTN. Have a good one.